Area of nearly 3,000 acres now under intensive cultivation.
But the whole country would be stuck holding a huge debt, a debt so large that it couldn't possibly repay it. So at some point, we economic hitmen would go back to that country and say, look, you can't repay your loan, so do us a favor. Vote with us on the next critical United Nations vote, or send troops in support of ours to someplace in the world like Iraq, or, most importantly, sell your oil to us real cheap, or your labor pool, or some other resource that we want. So it's an amazingly clever scheme, because the lines for tracing it were very hazy. These private companies are paid by the government, but they're paid under these misleading contracts. So, for instance, Charles T. Maine was hired to do economic hitman work, but is considered engineering feasibility studies or economic feasibility study, and there was no direct connection. And of course, the other interesting thing is the money, we didn't even have to get the money that we loaned the countries. We got it through the World Bank. We'd set up an organization that was there to provide the money to do this. So we didn't need to provide it. Our own government, the United States government, didn't have to provide it, except we'd provide some to the World Bank. So we didn't even have to put up the money. And in that way, we've managed in the last 30 or 40 years to build the world's first truly global empire. And we've done it primarily without the military, primarily through economic hitmen. Claudine was very frank with me. She said, you know, this is a dirty business. If I were a banker and I were to offer a loan to someone, knowing full well that the person couldn't possibly repay the loan, but I made this offer because I wanted to get something from the person later on, that would be a crime in the United States. That's illegal. And she made that very, very clear to me. So she portrayed the dirty side of the business, while at the same time holding out this offer of money and power and sex. And she told me what I'd be expected to do, and there it was. And she let me know that I shouldn't consider going into that work, even taking my first assignment, unless I was convinced that I was going to stick with it, because, as she put it, once you're in for life.
Por favor, señor, ¿dónde está mi equipage?
No comprendo, señor. Favor de pasar por aquí.
I was so sure I'd learned the right pronunciation. But when I tried my phrasebook Spanish at Maracaibo Airport, nobody could understand a word. It brought home what I was told in the briefing sessions by Creole. I'm starting work in a foreign country for an American oil company, and I'll have to learn its ways, just as Creole has. We each represent the United States here, in the eyes of the Venezuelans.
If you work directly for the CIA or the National Security Agency or one of the other government organizations, as the original economic hitmen did, and if you were discovered doing what we do, the government would be culpable, and fingers would be pointed and said, this is U.S. policy. It's much easier to go out and hire someone who's been trained by our military or perhaps by our CIA, has all the qualifications, knows exactly what he is doing, but does not work directly for the government, works for a private company. So if that person is caught, it cannot be traced back to the government.
My next letter will be from Lagunitas, because I leave for the oil fields tomorrow. Love to you and the boys.
Jim.
Where is Daddy, Mommy?
Well, Jeff, I'll just show you. We're here in the United States, and Daddy is down here in Venezuela.
I had the driver take me for a ride around Caracas. He showed me the new sections in the east, where just 10 years ago there were sugarcane and coffee plantations. Some of the residential areas are almost futuristic. But others are so quiet and tranquil that you seem to be in another world. University City is one of the impressive sights of Caracas, another example of the prosperity oil has helped to bring to Venezuela.
Every country in the world that has major supplies of oil has suffered. Oil is not a benefit for these countries. It's a benefit for a few of the very wealthy people at the top of the economic totem pole in these countries.
You know, the whole theory of development lending is you borrow money from the World Bank, and by then you'll invest in this wonderful dam or adopt these wonderful policies which will promote economic growth, which will easily pay back the loan and then more, so it's a good investment. But of course this development lending doesn't work out. Huge parts of the world have been going backwards. I mean, you can look at sub-Saharan Africa, most of Latin America. It's been 2 lost decades. People, in many ways, the 50 or 60% of the population of most Latin American countries are as poor as they've ever been, in some cases poorer.
The Caraqueños are especially proud of their low-rent housing projects. Huge apartment buildings in clusters on the hillsides. We have nothing like them at home.
In every one of these cities, you're probably going to find skyscrapers. And you're going to find a lot more people driving Mercedes-Benzes. But if you go into the poor sections, you're going to find it overwhelmingly worse in much more numbers. What they don't teach you in school, what you don't think about in general, is that when you help a country's economy, you don't necessarily help its people. You sometimes only help a very few of the very rich at the top, and that's true throughout what we call the third world. Identificamos un país que tiene recursos nuestras corporaciones desean. Por ejemplo, en los 70s identificamos a Ecuador como un país lleno de petróleo.
Yo le pregunto al arrepentido si a un gángster, a un sicario de la CIA, tiene conciencia y por lo tanto tiene credibilidad como para convencer de su arrepentimiento.